Welcome back to Summerween. The high today is 106 degrees, and because it's so terrible outside, we're doing a whole summer of horror movies to invoke the feeling of autumn. I'm your host, Maggie. With me is my other host, Cam, and today we're talking about a very scary movie, which I was so excited to share with Cam. What is it, Cam?
Maybe the most romantic movie of all time. Not for the characters who die horribly, but for Maggie and I,
oh my God.
This is perfect. This is the chocolate to my peanut butter.
It was like they went into a laboratory and said, how do we make a horror movie that is perfectly tailored for these two people? And they made this movie somehow almost 10 years ago.
And this is kind of your party. You're leading this one because you saw this movie years ago.
Yeah, I was in like grad school. It was a long time ago.
And what did you think of it then versus now? And why were you anxious for me to see it?
Well, that was early in my horror journey. So at that point, like everything was scaring me. And so my like memory of how scary this movie was really skewed. But I was like, I remember when I watched it, I was terrified. It was like one of my first found footage movies. I was really excited by it. But like not only that, it was like, it was scary and fun, but it was also about like it was National Treasure, but scary. And so I was like, oh, this is awesome. And I thought Cam will like this too. And I didn't want to give away the big piece that I knew you would really love, which we'll get into. But so like in my head, when I had first seen it, it had scared the shit out of me. But now looking back, I'm like, okay, every movie that scared the shit out of me at that time would not scare me in the same way now. So it'll probably be not that scary. So I was like, you know, Cam, this movie is really fun. It's scary, but because you asked me like the second they go into the catacombs, you're like, is this as scary as The Descent? And I was like, no, The Descent is scarier. And now I'm not so sure.
They're both terrifying.
Yeah.
This one did scare the shit out of me.
I'm so glad. I was so happy. That's like rare that I can like find something that's like scarier for you or will impress you compared to impressing me. So yeah, it was this was fun
until the movie steered into the subject matter that I love more than anything. Until then, it was just the worst thing in the world. It was just the scariest, most evil, nasty shit.
Oh, it was so fun.
And then just as it got truly terrifying, it also leaned into the subject matter I like. So then I had this like academic interest, as well as being scared shitless for the rest of the movie.
And I should also say, so this is As Above, So Below. Came out in 2014, written and directed by John Eric Dowdle, and is co-written by his brother Drew Dowdle. And it stars Perdita Weeks and Ben Feldman, who, funny enough, Ben Feldman, who plays George in this movie, played Travis, Beth's date, in Cloverfield, which was our first Summerween episode this year. So that was unintentional. These like actor crossovers we're just unintentionally having. Barbara Hershey and Insidious, which came out last time, who was also in Black Swan, which was episode 2. So we're just playing like leapfrog.
We're 4 for 4 here.
Yeah.
For movies that just scare the dog shit out of us.
Absolutely. And so the premise of this movie is, which we're going to spoil, by the way. I'll just lead with that. But the premise is it's this archaeologist, and she is trying to discover these secrets of the Philosopher's Stone, Nicholas Flamel alchemy, right? And so she ends up going on this excursion into the Paris catacombs to try and find the stone. And as you might imagine, things do not go well. It's also found footage style. So it's like she's like making a documentary about this conveniently. And so some guy's holding a camera. But also, I think most, if not everybody, on this journey has a little camera in their headlamp as well.
Only the people who survive.
Oh, that's interesting.
Weirdly enough. But
interesting.
Yeah, it is found footage, but I think it's important to kind of really hit that point.
Yeah.
That the cameraman, because this is supposed to be a documentary, he's a cameraman. So a lot of the movie, unless it's the scary parts, especially everything before you go underground, feels like a normal movie a lot of the time.
Yeah, no, like you can, like it's got the like handheld quality, but it's not like shitty quality cameras. Like it's not, like Cloverfield is like a handheld camcorder,
right.
like a layman's camera, right? This is like filmed on a nicer camera plus the little headlamp cameras, just for, diversity of camera angles and such.
And that variety and range I thought was really helpful. Also for just drawing the contrast of them in a museum or that pretty bell tower versus them fighting for their lives underground.
Exactly. And I'm going to talk more about the found footage thing, I think, a little bit later.
Sure.
But first I want to like just zoom out a bit, like again, and just talk about why this is so perfectly crafted for the both of us. So for me, not only was it just like scary and fun, but it's like it taps into everything I love. Remember, I saw this when I was in grad school getting my master's in art history, okay? In art history. So this woman is like going into the Cluny Museum in Paris, the medieval art museum, which I have been to. My focus was medieval art. And like she's standing looking at this stone tablet, which is just to the left of the original heads of the kings of Judah that came from the original Notre Dame Cathedral. So like immediately I'm locked in. This is like 5 minutes into the movie, okay? But it's like she's engaging with art and history and archaeology. And it's like finding clues and digging around. So then we're dipping into National Treasure, which is like one of my favorite movies of all time. Unironically, I love that movie. We watched it for the 4th of July this year because it's the only thing that makes me feel patriotic. But so it's that, and it's like there's riddles and
her main quest is Harry Potter.
Right. It's I mean, like not a Harry Potter invention, but like the Philosopher's Stone thing, like Nicholas Flamel, like
it also looks the same. It's that weird chunky red.
Yeah, I mean, like
gem.
That's mythology that I'm really familiar with and has like a close tie to me personally. So it's like it's all that. Plus, there's a fun romance. Plus, there's like translating and decrypting ancient codes and languages and symbols, and also it's like just really fucking scary, and it takes place in Paris, one of my favorite cities in the world, inside the Paris catacombs, which I have been in and will now never go in ever again. I'm so glad I already took that off my bucket list because I can't go back. No. So and at the end, spoiler, they come out of the manhole and Notre Dame is in the background. So like it's just the perfect thing for me. Okay, so I was so excited to share this movie with you and to rewatch it. I think I'd forgotten how much I liked it. I liked it even more this time watching it than I did the first time. And for you, not only does it also like you like history and art, and you like Paris. You like a real scary movie in Paris, but the real kicker for you is all the stuff with Dante and hell.
Oh yeah, that's my shit. Because I have advanced degrees in Faustus and demon shit. Which is
that's what it says on your diploma.
A shorthand way of saying philosophy degree and experimental humanities doing Faustus projects. But I also took Dante classes in grad school.
Yeah, you've done a lot of work on Dante.
I've done a lot with Dante, and this was so smooth the way they dovetailed into Dante because I'm looking for it. I'm hoping for it in every movie. And always. One of the movies that we're probably going to do later on this summer in Summerween is another Dante horror movie.
Yeah.
Which also dovetailed in a way I wasn't expecting. And I'm excited to talk about those in concert.
Yeah, me too.
Those movies, but that's just a tease. But this one, I wasn't expecting it. And they gave us the setup in such a sly way because we have sort of that basic setup of Virgil and the Pilgrim.
Right.
We have Papillon, who's the expert, who's leading them through, and he's been there before. And then basically not Americans, but the visitors, the tourists.
The not Frenchmen's. Yeah.
They are like the Pilgrim.
Yes.
And maybe I'm just dumb, but when we first went into the catacombs, I was thinking it was all one level.
Right.
So I wasn't expecting a descent through the circles of hell.
The 9 circles of hell. Yeah.
And then once you start to go down, when you're already underground and it's already scary, it gets so much scarier, and you're so worried about them that, at least for me, there was a sleight of hand effect where I didn't notice that we were landing in this Dante territory.
Yeah, you kind of don't figure it out until like you're halfway down, which I think is so much scarier. Because if you start off by saying, all right, we're going to do a Dante thing, then you're just paying attention to that the whole time, and you're almost taken out of the story.
They don't signpost it either. It's not like, we have to go down again to hit greed. It was just, this is a dead end, and now we can break through the floor.
And at no point does she, because like this whole time, Scarlett, the main character, is like trying to decode what's happening, is interpreting the clues that they're finding, and like is making historical references. But at no point does she actually reference Dante. Right. She doesn't say, this must be the 7th circle. Like she doesn't ever engage with that, which I think is really interesting because she's going on what she believes is true. This mythology around Nicholas Flamel and the Sorcerer's Stone. She believes in that, but I don't think she's really adhering to like 14th century Italian poetry, you know?
All of the best horror movies work with this sort of light touch where you don't hit the sins on the head or the realms or even the monsters. All of them go unnamed. Even when Satan shows up, we don't know who it is.
No one says, that's the devil. Right.
I mean, even you and I didn't really until we were looking through the IMDb trivia, by the way. If you want to know more about this, we're not going to hit all of it because it's too exhaustive.
There's so much,
deep, but it's real academic stuff over there.
We will dig into it a little bit later, though, or maybe in a few minutes. But
I loved that it never felt like a checklist, and that all of the realms or sins or monsters. They weren't random arcane stuff that you just vaguely assumed was from history or the Bible. It was all anchored so beautifully in the characters' backstories.
Exactly, yes. That's what made it work, I think, was it's not just these random people who are untethered to what's happening going through the circles of hell. It's them addressing their own sins, and each of them has like a different type of sin, which allows you to explore these different circles.
I have a question about this while we're here.
Okay.
I thought this was a pretty, as someone who's done a lot of Dante, read a bunch of translations, parsed translations, tried to do some of my own stuff within that realm. I thought this was a faultless navigation of this story and source material because it worked so gently with it. And I mean, it plumbed the depths of the source material, but never named it, called it out, didn't look at the camera.
Right.
I think there's a really boring version of this story somewhere where you do try to explain everything.
Yeah.
There's a slower, drier, terrible version. But the thing I noticed looking back on this, because it feels so, when you're underground, it feels so arcane and mythic and ancient, desolate, eternal, terrifying. Those are just kind of the word balloons that I farted out on the page here. This captures, and this is me talking from Faustus and Dante, and I took a great Satan class with Tristan. Hi, Tristan. During undergrad, charting his that sort of development and conceptions of hell and Satan throughout literary history.
Yeah,
I think this is the best on-screen representation of hell I've ever seen.
Wow. That's pretty bold.
Do you think there's a better hell anywhere?
In a movie? I don't know. I don't think so, honestly. This one's so understated too in terms of like aesthetic detail. Like it's not this big fiery pit. It's like it's just mostly darkness with like the occasional horribly terrifying detail that pops out, you know?
Because it's usually hell is something that is usually alluded to on screen. You get something
you don't
like,
usually go into hell.
No, you get Mount Doom at the end of Lord of the Rings.
Right.
You get Mustafar at the end of the Star Wars prequels.
Or you even get the lipstick demon's lair in Insidious.
Right.
But even then, that's not really meant to be hell. That's more of like a little waiting chamber for him.
And the lava and the stalactites, that isn't really hell to me.
No.
I think the sort of the essence of that, especially the way it's developed throughout the literary history here, is that it's largely unexplained.
Right, yeah. I mean, that's how it is in Dante too, right? There are descriptions, but like for the most part, there's not like as far as I'm aware, there's not like a big landscape description of the entire setting and the room that you're in or whatever.
You're moving through so much space that you're kind of constantly dazzled with images. You're also going through hell, heaven, and purgatory. So there's an incredible amount of description and locations and realms and looks to it. But even hell doesn't have one set look. The deepest, darkest circle of hell is icy. There's a different thing there. But this version of hell, it sidestepped there's a bunch of fire and a guy who looks like the Hades Disney character. It wasn't just that. It had this desperation because it was these dusty sort of endless caves with these bits of artwork sprinkled through, or the weird old dead guy, just kind of the artifacts that anchor it in that source time period.
Yeah, right.
But it still feels desolate.
Yeah.
It still feels like a punishment.
Yeah. Well, and I was impressed at how simultaneously like of our world and so not of our world it felt. Like it feels grounded and like it could exist based on how they get there. They're literally just like going down into the earth, and it's just, it's more caves. It's more like, I can totally conceive that there are like weird tunnels and things below the earth. Like that's, there's rock and shit below the earth. I know that from taking science class, right? And so it feels of our world in that way because there is no like random, I mean, there are actually little moments of fire, but there's not like a fiery burning lake, and there's not like pillars of volcanoes underground, but so it's like it feels like worldly in that way, but also there are these weird things that are just impossible, like a burning car, hundreds of feet below the earth, or a very terrifying cloaked figure sitting on a throne, or the weird demons that are coming out of the wall, or the weird sounds and like the weird vortex of sound they get in like the third level or whichever one that is, and the hands coming out of the blood river. So there are things that are impossible, but yet it feels so possible, which is what's so scary about it.
I would say more than half of the scary stuff here is curated. and tailored to these specific people.
Mm-hmm.
The burning car, the piano,
Yes.
the woman chasing Benji. A lot of those moments are specifically designed to upset or deal with the kind of gnawing trauma of these people. So that's not supposed to be some sort of objective description of hell. But the parts you get that are objective, most horror movies, when they try to deal with things like demons, they go with scary, aggressive, animalistic shit. That's why Lipstick Demon works so well in Insidious.
Yeah,
But I hazard to even call them demons here. The way Satan kind of lurks in the background, you get it's a cloaked figure with like a cracked angel, almost cherub
baby
sort of face,
but like in a really terrifying way. It's
Right.
not cute.
and he's sitting on this chair in the dark with his back turned to you, and that is supposed to be Satan on the throne. But that is so simplistic. That's like a black box theater
it's
version.
not like an actual like big throne that you would imagine in like a John Martin print. It's much more simplified and grounded, you know?
Or you get these toothy zombie things that they're more like mummies almost.
Yeah.
You get the hands in the blood pool. All of these things that capture, they don't just feel like they're angry at you. They feel like they are tortured.
Right. They're the tortured souls. Yeah.
So you get that sense of agony within the creatures and the objective parts of hell here. And I think that's something a lot of horror movies miss out on.
Sure.
Because there is weird stuff, there's unexplained stuff like the chanting fanatics at the opening. But so much of Dante, yes, some of it's rooted in other historical religious stuff. Some of it is him projecting from his own life and his own experiences, putting people he knows in different circles. But I love that mix of the objective and the subjective. I think that's incredibly true to Dante without you having to know Dante's personal life. It's interpreting the method without direct references to him.
Yeah.
And this is maybe the first representation of hell I've seen that took the approach to hell that Dante took without using what he did with it. Do you know what I mean?
I think I do. Yeah. Yeah. It's really cleverly done. And even though like they don't ever name it in the movie, there's such a clear commitment to the bit of, we're going to go through all 9 circles of hell, of Dante's hell. And this is a very kind soul on IMDb sort of laid out what these different circles are. And I've sort of like simplified and also rethought some of them, pulled from what we think and what we've seen. But it's so impressive the way this is done. So I want to go through the 9 circles really quickly with you. So the first bit they come into before they even enter actual hell is the vestibule. In Dante, that is where one hears like anguish screams of the damned, and they're like these souls that are in 2 classes, the opportunists and the outcasts. This is of course the freaky cultists that we see. The naked ones are the outcasts and the clothed ones are the opportunists. But then once we actually go through that terrifying little portal and actually start to enter hell, level 1 is limbo. And these are the long tunnels and that have inscriptions of poetry and philosophy. And this is where the directionless soul of Leto is, their friend who died and is now wandering through limbo.
What nickname did we give him while watching the film?
Hot Neville.
Another little Harry Potter reference buried through here.
Okay, and then level 2 is lust. And by the way, these are called like based on like people who do these sins go here. That's what that means. Lust. So these are these almost completely colorless tunnels, and this is where we hear the loud vortex of the souls. That's when it gets really, really loud, and it's like almost like a big storm that comes straight from Dante. Level 3 is gluttony, which is a widened 3rd floor tunnel that contains the growl of an unseen Cerberus. Cerberus is the 3-headed dog that guards the gates of the underworld in Greek mythology. So you kind of hear this like loud grumbling, and so that's what that is.
We just talked about a Cerberus in our Diablo episode.
That's right, we did. Yeah. Go check those out. Those are fun. Really leans into a lot of these themes.
Yes, it does.
Level 4 is greed. So this is where they first think they find the Philosopher's Stone. They come into that chamber, right? So it has this engraving of Plutus, who's the god of wealth. Of course, the trap treasure, then the fake Philosopher's Stone that can only work once, which they do use once, but then it doesn't work again because it's not the real stone. The next level is wrath, and this is the reverse of greed that we were just in. So it's the same thing as greed, but everything is reversed. It's completely empty, and Nicholas Flamel's body is now decayed. Next level 6 is heresy, and this is like these walls, and there's a flame lit enclosure with the 3 ring inscriptions. This is where it starts to get fun when we go into number 7, violence. So there are 3 rings within this circle. The first ring is violence against neighbors. This is where Susie is killed when Leto beats her to death. It's horrible and very, very scary. The second ring within violence is violence against self, and this is where we see hallucinations of Scarlett's dead father who killed himself by hanging. The third ring is violence against God, art, and nature, and this is where we see satanic occultist markings over like these sandy tunnels. In Dante, there's a whole thing about like this sandy desert thing. The next level, 8, fraud. This is where we get this like amphitheater shaped area, where we see this manifestation apparently of Benji's victim, this woman carrying a baby who pushes Benji down and kills him.
The sound design for the deaths, they're incredible.
God, the sound is really good in this
Very
movie.
good. Yeah.
So we never hear specifics about Benji's past, but we can presume that he committed some sort of fraud relating to this woman and a baby. So that's fun. So she knocks him down and he falls down to level 9. Level 9 is treachery. These are the water tunnels, and this is where we see Danny and Papillon's burning car. So Danny, who is George's brother, who he betrayed by leaving behind to try and go get help, but before he could get help, the brother drowned. And this is also where we see the burning car where Papillon betrayed somebody, presumably, and it resulted in their death in a burning car. And this is where Papillon is snatched up into the car and literally like put into the earth with his feet dangling up. That's straight out of Dante. Very, very cool. Yeah, rip. This is also where that wall demon thing bites George.
Yes, the mummy thing.
It's there's a lot of speculation that monster demon is Cain, who like committed the first act of treachery. Cain and Abel were the sons of Adam and Eve. Cain killed Abel, so the ultimate act of betrayal, killing his brother. So isn't that fun? So that's the final level, right? And then it says the final area of hell is the bottomless pit of penitence, and where they have to take the reverse leap of faith to get out. So that's sort of how it's organized. And I appreciate the commitment. Like, it's not like, oh, we're going to kind of think about Dante and they're going to go through some levels and they're going to, tackle their own sins. And they like did it. Like, they did their research and committed to it. And I just really
without
admire
boring
that.
you.
Yes, without boring you. Exactly. Because there are so many other details that I didn't mention that are like even more indicators of there's an attention to detail without naming it and without boring you with backstory.
And the only time it looks like they're going into the stereotypical obvious Mount Doom lava sort of hell is that last moment when they're pushing open the manhole cover and you see a bunch of orange light and you think,
true.
oh,
yes.
we're finally doing
they're going into the
stupid
fire of hell. Yeah.
And but it's the lights of Paris.
Yes, it's their escape.
It's them escaping.
Yes.
That was
it's
such
so cool.
That felt like the only maybe wink from the filmmakers of look, we're not doing the obvious thing, because it wasn't a feint every time they subverted the tradition there. They just did their own thing and then gave you that little wink at the end of like, look, haha, we didn't do it.
I have a question for you. When you watched that, when did it first click with you that they were coming out from below the ground? Because at first it's so confusing. You're like, why can't they move the cover? Like, because the way they film it, I think, is really clever. I didn't notice it until like they start to climb out. Like, it was a big like holy shit moment for me when I watched it, and it was such a cool realization.
Yeah, I think it was probably there. I mean, I was trying to not track the Dante story. Yeah, the whole Divine Comedy while I was watching this. I was catching references as they were happening, but I never try to predict movies, especially horror movies, while I'm watching them.
Sure, yeah. When did you first catch on to the Dante stuff? Because again, it's not obvious, it's not spoken aloud.
It was probably the first or second time they went downwards.
Oh, okay, sure, yeah. So you're like, oh, I see, we're doing levels.
Like, this circles. Is a metaphor.
Okay, yeah. That makes sense, yeah. The other fun thing is, I think in Dante it says like, to get out, you have to crawl down Satan's belly or something. And like, there's a line that says like, to go up, you have to go down or something like that. So.
I'm also used to reading Dante or Faustus or any of my, John Milton's Paradise Lost. I think his Satan is probably the most interesting and compassionate character in all of fiction. So totally. I'm used to looking for the literary Satan in most work, just because I think it's so, especially in the Western world, I think it's baked into everything. Any sort of like Judeo-Christian sort of basis for storytelling, a lot of those central characters, I think, are in most of these stories. Yeah. And it doesn't even need to be conscious, because it is so baked into the way we understand and the way we tell stories. And I look for this stuff anyway. I mean, we just did that episode over on YouTube of me talking about 1987's Wall Street.
Oh, yeah, it's a Faustus story,
and
yeah.
arguing flawlessly for half an hour that is a perfect Faustus retelling. So I'm used to looking for it where it's not necessarily there, because I think it speaks to themes that are always present.
Yeah.
So when this got overt, I just sort of turned the lights off and enjoyed.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
I didn't have to do the work. Someone else was handling it.
Totally, yeah. Yeah, no, I appreciated the commitment to the bit, but also still like letting it be its own thing. And like, even if you don't have any background on Dante or mythology or history or anything, you can still really enjoy this movie just because it's a well-made movie. The characters are good. The story is really interesting. It's terrifying. And I think like, and this is where I want to talk about found footage and how perfect I think like that choice to make it found footage was, I think, the absolute right choice.
Oh, it's the only choice.
Yeah. Like, number one, it's almost always going to be a money saver. Like the budget for this movie was $5 million and it grossed $41 million.
But they were also allowed to film in the catacombs.
I was going to say
The Descent had to build sets.
Yeah, no, I forgot to say at the beginning, they got to film inside the catacombs, which I think has never happened before. I like totally assumed it was a set, except maybe like when she goes on the tour of the catacombs at the beginning of the movie, I could tell that was the real thing. But yeah, they got to film it all inside the catacombs, which is so cool. But yeah, also probably saved them a lot of money.
Terrifying. Can you imagine?
No.
Can you imagine?
No, filming a scary movie about the catacombs in the catacombs?
With filmmakers that are this
talented.
talented?
Oh my God. Yeah. No, I would lose my mind. I don't know how they did that.
But what I was speaking to before about the Dante style of this negotiation of hell and all of these themes, that it balances the objective and the subjective, found footage foregrounds that approach really strongly, because you have those cameraman moments when you're above ground that feel objective, and pulling screenshots, because if you watch these episodes on YouTube, it's the same podcast content, but I rotate a couple dozen pictures from whatever we're talking about in the background. Pulling images for this one, a lot of the above ground ones just look like screenshots from a traditional movie.
Yeah.
But then the shakiness or the obscured, the grain, the distance of like a hooded figure, all of the below ground shots feel found footage.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that keeps, I think that's perfect, because if you have too close a look at any of the scary stuff, it stops really being scary. You get to know it and understand it, which is, again, why something like Cloverfield is so good. I think this is the huge advantage of found footage. But it also balances, again, the objective, which is the historical roots of so much of this that Scarlett is explaining and understanding above the surface. And then below the surface, you get the found footage. You get the sleight of hand, the feints, the thing that catches your eye as it's running through the back of the shot. It's a beautiful balance. And I love that that extends from the way the film is written, the way the film is shot. This is such a complete vision of a story. Yeah.
And it makes it feel so grounded. Like filming it in the catacombs, like actually a place that really exists, and doing it in this found footage style makes this feel so possible and so scary. Because like, I mean, I don't know, something like The Descent, like going into a cave is something only like crazy people do. Like they're like explorers and like outdoorsy people who love to go into caves.
A lot of bachelor dates are them like spelunking into some dumb cave.
Yeah, but like they don't go very far, right? Like actually like going into a cave is like a crazy thing to do. And they address that in the movie because they all think it's already like been charted and they're like, oh yeah, we're going to follow this thing. But then like turns out the one girl like lied and like totally screws them all over. And so they're all like, this was insane. We would never do this. So then you as the viewer, like, yeah, I would never go into a cave. I'm not a crazy person. But going into the catacombs, this like tourist destination that was built for like practical purposes. I mean, like creepy practical purposes to house dead bodies, but like practical purposes. It's not one of those things that's like, oh, that's scary. That's nature. That's unknown. This is like man-made. As I think something that like, I mean, I did it. I went down there. I was like, this is cool. This is a great historical thing. Like dead bones. That's fun.
You're short though.
Well, that's true. I'm short.
But the moment where Benji thinks he's stuck.
Oh my God.
When they're crawling through.
So good. And the Descent does the exact same thing. Like things start to get scary when one of your characters has a POV panic attack. Like you get that in both movies, but they both do it really well. And I think it's a really effective choice. And it's a great way to kick it off.
I had the Descent in mind while watching this. And I don't want to just say that the found footage makes the caves scarier, because the claustrophobia is just as terrifying in this as it was The Descent. I think they're both fairly perfect horror movies.
Yeah.
But they're definitely going for different feelings. So this worked perfectly for this story, but I was definitely terrified throughout The Descent too.
Yeah. It's not like it can only work if it's found footage, but it just happened to work really well for this. I think also just in a practical sense, like doing it in like with we're filming a documentary is like convenient and works great, but also like the headlamp thing of like allowing for multiple camera angles is really smart, and I think not that big of a leap, so I think that worked really well too, and I really liked that. And it's just great for the disorientation of it all, because that's the idea, is like they think they know what they're looking for and what they're doing, and actually they have no idea, and it like all comes as this terrible shock. And so the disorientation, the quick jittery movements, I mean, it's the same thing we talked about in Cloverfield. Like it's this like incredibly human experience that we're just following along, and you're not sure what you're seeing, and you can't see very well because it's incredibly dark. Like there are lights on the camera and the headlamps, but only so much. I just think it works really beautifully.
There's another similarity with Cloverfield that's good here. I think Cloverfield, just in the way the city is shot, and all of those minor set pieces of the places that they have to run through or hide in, like the subway, the way those locations and the chase is shot is incredible. In the same way here, the way the caves and the catacombs are shot, I think that pretty much makes it a 10 out of 10 horror movie just there. The way the catacombs are done here, the execution of that. But then when you get to the creature design here, when you get to those that Cain and Abel kind of, I mean, they're not mummies, they're just dusty and they have funky teeth.
Yeah.
Those, you have the blood hands, you have that Satan figure who's kind of Satan, you have the figures in the hoods in the background, that chair, the dead old guy body, the Nicholas Flamel.
Oh, I don't like that at all.
Those are so phenomenal.
Yeah.
The way that they're designed, the way that they're shot, that they're poorly lit, the restraint that is used in when they are deployed, it's so tactical that it elevates this to something else. And it's exactly how I felt about Cloverfield. I think it's a 10 before you get to the creature.
Right.
And the creature is just something else. I love the continuity between these, and I'm glad we're zeroing in on kind of great found footage for this Summerween.
Yeah.
Because it's working extra hard. Because I imagine shooting found footage and keeping it coherent and focused and still visible, because if it shakes too much, you can't see anything. And then people just get frustrated.
Right, then it's like not fun to watch. Yeah.
When everything is firing on all cylinders like you have here, I think you accomplish something really special, which makes traditional filmmaking almost look controlled or safe. There's something that's slightly out of your control. There's something slightly mythical or arcane in doing found footage and nailing it. This tapped into some of the primal feelings I had watching Blair Witch. And I thought that one, because it was such this like clarion call for found footage as this subgenre of horror, I thought I wouldn't really get that scrappiness, but also expertise. And I felt that here. Cloverfield felt like a movie. This captured more of that like elemental panic that I felt during Blair Witch.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah. And they're very different things, because like Cloverfield is so, well, I don't know. I was going to say Cloverfield is so less like likely, but it's not. I mean, the whole conversation was about how it's like 9/11, and like that's kind of the point, is that it's sort of something that did happen, just to an extreme and slightly more impossible level. So maybe not, I don't know. Yeah, maybe it's because it's like so specific to one area, whereas like the elemental like human instinctual thing of like being in the woods or being underground is universally scary no matter where you are. Maybe that's really more what it is.
It's like the fear of the dark.
Yeah.
And that's weaponized as much as every subconscious trauma and regret that these people have. I have one last compliment to the script here.
Yeah.
I was so blown away by this movie, really on every level. I mean, we haven't really talked about the cast, but they are all fantastic.
They're all really, really good.
Perfectly cast. Great range. Great dynamic between them. Perdita Weeks, who plays Scarlett as the lead. Amazing horror lead. She's fantastic.
Yeah, she's so good. She plays this like determined, almost frenzied character so well. She does a really good job.
We've talked a lot about set design and direction and like what the director of photography would be up to here. But I want to end on a note about the script, because that's where all of this begins.
Of course.
And the special maybe accolade that I can give this script is that it does such a beautiful job justifying dangerous and dumb decisions that the characters have to make. That's sort of the preeminent meme about horror movies.
Yeah, it's like, why would you go into the closet? Like, don't open the door, you fucking moron. Yeah,
And this movie does such a great sleight of hand, kind of tricky job of trapping them and motivating them, breaking them up and bringing them back together, that every time Scarlett says, we have to go deeper, we have to keep moving, she's right.
Right, because they can't go back. Like, there's no other option.
And like you and I on the couch are going, no, don't do that, don't do that.
Right, but like,
but it's the only decision at that moment.
Because they keep getting like either their entrance has been blocked off, or they've gone in a circle, or behind them is a scary demon, or an impossible fall that they can't go back up. You know, like it's impossible, so they just have to keep going.
And I mean, from the very beginning, I think this is why the opening in Iran is so powerful.
Oh, I love that opening. I think it's so good.
You get a sense of her drive, and like Blair Witch, she's leading this project, and her yearning, her motivation is the thing that drives all of this story.
Yes.
So you when later she's the one just kind of gallantly pushing forward, it doesn't feel out of character.
Right.
It feels completely rooted.
Yes, because you established that from the get-go.
And the real panic sequence, because I talked about the feeling of panic I got during Cloverfield. I definitely got that here, even though this wasn't on a big screen in a packed theater.
Yeah.
I definitely got that here. And the most terrifying part of this movie is when she has to go back through a couple layers of hell, basically, to replace the Sorcerer's Stone. That, like, mad dash was astonishing.
Yeah, it was. It was, yeah.
And that was the perfect synthesis of the advantage of found footage.
Yeah.
The power of your lead actor. The subtlety of the writing and the strength of the direction.
Yeah. It was such a like, oh shit moment, because you're like, imagine going through all of those things and then willingly going back twice, because you have to go back and then forward again.
And it made sense. It was the worst possible decision and the only thing she could do.
The only thing she could do. Yeah, absolutely crazy. And again, it's her motivation, her sort of like recognizing, like sort of understanding the mythology of this place she's entered.
Yes.
Like the thing she's realizing, oh, the world as I imagine it, so it may be, or whatever it is, right? So she's able to sort of like punch the demons and like, which sounds so goofy, but it doesn't come across as goofy at all on screen. I didn't think so. She's able to make like the hands and the bloody river disappear, and like that realization of when she realizes that she is the stone. Like it's such a turning point, but she's still absolutely terrified. Like that's why I think she's doing such a good job. Like she's written well and she's acting this well, is that she's incredibly determined and brave, but she's not like unafraid. Like she's terrified the whole time, and she gets more and more terrified as she continues down. So it's
this was worst case scenario Indiana Jones.
Exactly. Yeah,
I love this so much.
Man,
as above so below.
This is a good movie. And I was reading the critics like hated this movie when it came out. Critics are dumb. That's what I've learned. They are dumb and wrong.
There are a couple critics I really respect and follow. Darren Mooney, working for The Escapist.
He's good. This. Yeah, he's really, really good.
His columns for The Escapist are incredible. Read every single one. But when it comes to horror movies, I don't really care about anyone's opinion. No. I think it's the most subjective genre of film.
Totally, yeah. And I think so many critics judge it not as a horror film, but as something else. And they're not judging it for what it's trying to accomplish. And I think that's really unfair.
And indie horror specifically is definitely considered the most low art, the most lowbrow art. Maybe in our society, I think it's the most openly disrespected and derided. Which means you don't care about like institutional approval or critic reviews.
You're like, that's not my wheelhouse. Yeah,
I'll defend every one of the Saw sequels.
Of course,
every day.
They're so much fun.
We will do an episode one day about why I think Rob Zombie's Halloween is better than the original.
I thought you were going to say about Saw. I was like, we already did that, man.
I'm saying I will die for these opinions. And these are not mainstream opinions.
Sure, yeah.
This one was incredible.
It was.
This is the fourth one that we're covering for Summerween. We have a bunch of other ones planned out. But if you have other recommendations for other found footage we might love, other sort of historically informed horror that you might like, leave it below in the comments on YouTube, or you can leave it on a comment on our Substack, which is where you can also get all of the bonus episodes we've ever done. We're also on social media at secondbreakfastpod. Thank you as always for listening. We will be back for an episode on Tuesday and then Friday, and Oh my God, we have so many great episodes
We have so
coming
much
up.
going on
We've
this
recorded
summer.
so much.
We have. This has been a lot of fun.
It's a golden age for the pod, which means we're exhausted all the time.
We're also about to be gone for 2 weeks, so that's also.
But you won't know.
happening.
You'll have more content than
You'll
ever.
have no idea. It's gonna be great. All right. Yeah. Don't go underground ever.
No.
That's the takeaway.
Bring a bunch of friends you don't care about.
All right.
Talk to you soon. Bye.
Toodaloo. Bye.